Hey everyone, welcome and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be showing you how I sketch and paint a food truck, or I'd like to call it a cafe on wheels, something which I saw in Busan, Korea. I will be using my trusty Lamy Safari fountain pen today with water-resistant ink inside. And as always, you can find links and details of the materials that I use down in the video description below. This is the reference photo that I will be using for this piece, and I took this picture at Songjung Beach in Busan, South Korea. So you can actually see the ocean and the sky behind, but it's very gray in color. The sky and the sea also look quite similar in color. And I took this in the evening, and I really like the warm yellow light which is coming from the inside of that truck. So that will be an important light source as well. And I'm also going to try to make the sky and sea more blue instead of painting them so gray in color. So right now I am visualizing the overall contour and estimating how much space will surround our subject, which is that truck, and I will be sketching with my pen without an initial pencil sketch. So it's very important to sort of visualize where and how large the object will be on the page first before starting to sketch. And you can see that I am making a few dots to indicate where the main corners of this truck will be. And this is just an estimation. You can adjust as you go along. So with just a few dots, we have an estimate of how big this truck will be on the page and where all the corners are. So that will help to center your piece, as well as to control the size of that truck on that page. So now I'm starting with that first corner on the top, and I'm extending the lines out according to what I see in the reference. And as you can see, I'm using loose line work, sometimes breaking up those longer lines into a few sections instead of drawing one continuous long line. Right now, I'm tackling that back portion of the truck first, and the tricky part for me is sketching that top window cover or awning. So you can see that sometimes I practice the hand movement first before drawing the actual line, and that helped me be a little more accurate. But of course, mistakes are inevitable when drawing with a pen straight away, unless you already know the subject really well. But don't fret over the mistakes. That's what I tell myself. I just go over with a couple more lines and try to find the right one. So I think overcoming mistakes is a big part of making art, of sketching and painting. So for me, I just take note of my mistakes and I try to improve where and when I can. So what really matters to me is that, number one, I want to enjoy the process of sketching, especially when I sketch for myself. And number two is to finish the piece. No matter how many mistakes I've already made, I just need to complete it. And maybe no one will notice the mistakes. Maybe I will still like the outcome. Another way to make cleaner lines and a more accurate drawing is, of course, to start with a pencil sketch or even to trace the photo, to trace the reference. And I've tried both. Sure, the outcome is much more accurate and true to the subject. And of course, AI could do that for you. You wouldn't even need to take out a pen. You could just use AI and trace the photo. But to me, art and drawing is not about accuracy. It's not about following the subject accurately. It's about the process, the actual process of you, a human, drawing each line, of observing every detail of a subject, how you interpret the colors, how you wield your paintbrush, or how you add character to the piece. And ultimately, I think it is about how you make something your own. These days, I find it pretty liberating just using a pen because you can't erase the mistakes. There is no undo button. It's just like life. It may sound silly, it's kind of silly, but yeah, in life, you have to just keep going. No matter how tough it gets, just keep going. And eventually, you'll find a way. So, speaking about tough, I find sketching wheels to be slightly tricky. And I guess I haven't practiced them enough. And if there is something that I would like to really work on, sometimes I get out my pencil and do a draft first. And a draft is basically just more practice. So you get to understand something more the more you draw it. So right now I'm sketching in that big window and it takes up more than half of that side of that truck. And as you can see, I am being fairly loose with the lines, but still sticking to the basic structures and shapes as seen in the reference. For me, getting lost in the lines is almost meditative, and all I see is where this line goes, what angle this line is at, how much space should be left here, and in a way, it really lets me enjoy the subject. And It puts me in the moment. It allows me to also explore all the details and intricacies involved with a subject. So here we're coming to another, for me, kind of tricky awning. And I'm trying to estimate with my fingers and a few dots, but I do think that I drew this one a little too high up. So this awning looks like it's more open. And I should have sketched those two lines at a 90-degree angle to the window, like in the photo. And that's something that I will definitely remember in my next sketch. But despite realizing that mistake, I'm not stopping. In fact, it's best to just keep moving past that mistake and to draw other areas before taking a break, so you don't get caught up in that thing that isn't quite right. And so just keep moving, connect the dots and connect those lines. Just keep moving. I'm being very honest and real today here, and I make so many mistakes, and they do bog me down sometimes too. So I do want to thank everyone who has subscribed, commented, and liked my videos and my art, and given me encouragement. So currently we are over 200,000 subscribers here, which is completely mind-boggling to me, and I just wanted to say that I appreciate all of you here. Thank you for being here, and I feel really grateful that my art and sketches have somehow connected us together here. And I hope we can continue to inspire each other. Alright, so most of the basic structure of this truck is done. I am currently drawing the front wheel, and one thing to really take note of is that it should definitely look smaller than the back wheels, because the front wheels are further away from us. It's a very small but important detail. Okay, so the basic structure is down, and now for some details. And there are tons of details on this truck. I will be simplifying some things and retaining only the elements that I want to highlight. And one detail that I'm planning on adding is some plants in the windows. So I want to add some plants and greens just to bring in some green color, which will definitely complement all that red color of this truck. Alright, so a special detail here. I drew the window open, and remember, I'm also going to sketch a few little plants here for that added green. And now we're on to the last main part, which is the larger window. And in the reference, there are a lot of things in that window. So I will be simplifying everything, and I'll be doing minimal details for this part. I don't want to clutter up that area right there. I also won't be writing any words. I will just be doing some random little dots, which from far they do look kind of like words. Alright, so we are done with the line work. Today I'll be using this Winsor & Newton Cotman Sketchers Pocket Box for the painting and a few small synthetic brushes. So the first color that I'll be using is cerulean blue hue, and here I'm going to do a wet on wet technique for the sky, just a light wash, maybe leaving some white space for clouds. So as you can see, I am now brushing on some clean water onto the paper where the sky and sea are going to be. The weather is very hot at the moment, and any water or paint just dries super fast on the paper. So I'm going to try and be quick. As you can see, I am applying wet paint onto a fairly wet surface, which we call wet and wet. And I am also leaving space, white space, which will tend to look like clouds. It's not even been a minute and that's already drying up really fast. Next, I'm going to mix a darker blue and use that paint for the ocean. So as you can see, I'm using ultramarine and cerulean blue mixed together. And I'm going to try to make the sky and sea more separate in color, unlike what we see in the reference, where it seems like they are almost the same color, which could confuse people. Maybe they would think that there's only sky and no sea. So I just want this difference, this contrast in color. However, I do think that I went a little bit too dark for the sea, and the contrast with the sky is a tad bit too strong. I also realized that I made another mistake, which is the horizon line was too high up right here. So I'm trying to correct that right now by using a clean brush to lift some of that paint off and to push that horizon line on the right downwards. It's not ideal, but at least we don't see that the sea is so high up anymore. And I should have been paying more attention to the reference photo, because the horizon line is actually like slightly lower than the window on the back side of that truck. So I do tend to be less careful when I'm painting in my sketchbook. I know I've said this before, but I am more relaxed and I'm figuring things out, which I find to be so much more stress-free. Because let's say if this was something that I planned on giving to someone, or I'm doing this for a project, etc., I would definitely be much more careful. And then I would also try to minimize mistakes. I would fuss over details and spend much more time on this. So just that would make this a much more stressful thing overall, which is to be expected. So it's nice to have a sketchbook where you can just sketch however you like and make all the mistakes and be guilt-free, just make some art. Okay, so now I'm actually paying more attention to that horizon line, And I did make sure that the horizon line on the left and the right sides match up, they line up. And it's actually easier if there was a pencil sketch to follow, so you don't miss out these quite important details. And as you can see, I also added some strokes to the ocean, so we get some texture to show that there are some waves. Now we are on to the main color for this piece, and I'm mixing cadmium red pale hue with alizarin crimson hue for the main truck color. So we have this very nice red with a slight orange tinge. I'm using my 1/4 inch or 6mm filbert brush here, and it's one of my favorite brushes, especially for painting buildings and adding texture. Here I'm painting in those red stripes at the bottom of the truck. And it's harder using a bigger brush like this. You can get more control with a smaller brush, but the benefits of using a slightly bigger brush is that you get some nice brush strokes. And for me, it helps me to kind of let go of the need to make these perfect shapes. To me, wobbly, a little wobbly is pretty in its own way. It also helps to make it look more spontaneous in some way, and plus, individual brushstrokes can convey energy as well. It's like a record of the energy that was exerted by your hand whilst creating the sketch. The same goes for the pen strokes as well. I mean, some artists are masters of conveying this energy in their work through these strokes. Using that same paint, that same red color, I'm adding in a few darker areas. So I'm adding a second layer on top of that first layer to make certain areas look a little bit darker. And now, still using the same red color, I'm painting in those cup logos, and I won't try to get the words in because it is just too small. So I will only leave some white spaces, which will suggest something like words on those cups. Right now I'm mixing sap green and yellow ochre to paint those plants in those windows. And I'm going to be laying down a light layer of green first. Next, I'm adding ultramarine to that green mix, and I'm going to be using this darker green to dab in some shadows and leaf shapes. Really simple. Alright, moving on to the shadows. Today I'm going to try more purplish shadows. And as you can see, I'm mixing ultramarine, cerulean blue, and alizarin crimson. So blue mixed with red becomes a purple color. And depending on the ratio of blue to red, you can get all these different shades of purple. Using a different brush, I'm getting some cadmium yellow hue ready for the lights inside the truck. So essentially what I'm doing here is that first I laid down some yellow paint, making sure that the paint was really wet on the paper. And then I came in with that ready mixed purple paint, and I'm letting the paints blend at the edges, but also I'm making sure not to overpower that yellow with the very dark purple paint. Here I'm repeating the same process for that second window as well. And I will also be doing the same thing for the awnings where that yellow light will be reflected off of. So as you can see, I'm now adding some shadows with that same purple mix. Besides that, I will also be substituting black in the reference with this same purple color, such as for the tires and the side mirror. Here I'm adding some cerulean blue to some of the things on the truck. It's nice to kind of balance the color of the background a little bit so that it's not just the background that is blue. You can also find blue in other elements of this piece. Alright, so now I'm adding in the little details, especially for those signboards and more shadows. So here I decided to add some burnt sienna to that purple mix. So we get a darker gray here. And I felt that the purple wasn't quite dark enough. So that's why I decided to add some burnt sienna. So we have something which is close to black, but it's not actually black in color. It's actually sort of purple, but a very dark purple color. So now I'm just continuing to add shadows and those little details. And that final step would be to paint in those words on those signboards. But at this stage, I can see that it's almost done. Probably a good time also to step back and have a look at the sketch from a little further back so that you know where something is off. Maybe those shadows aren't really balanced in certain areas, and maybe add some color to dull that white of the page a little bit. So it's this kind of back and forth thing towards the end of the sketch so that we can just round it up and complete it. So currently I do like how this truck is coming along. It's a little bit wobbly looking, and I find that those colors are very interesting as well. And I wanted to try more purple shadows instead of the more bluish shadows that I tend to use in most paintings. And I don't often sketch vehicles as well, so this sketch was definitely not perfect. Mistakes were made, but we finished it anyway, and I'm quite happy with it. Alright, so just a few more dots for those words and we are done. I hope you found this video helpful to you. If you did, do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for your support so far. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.